Hi, Jeff.
Hey Rebecca, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. Did you I sent you my flight info for next month. So
Yes, I saw that. I'm so excited. Sarah, this is Jeff. He lives in Massachusetts, right by Providence, Rhode Island, right, Jeff?
yep.
And Jeff actually recently flew from the East Coast here to help me with the event, our TVIA Boys End of Summer Activity Day. And Jeff was so amazing. And he's an autism self-advocate. So he sends blogs every week and every day of the week. And he's just so much more to like guide our families. So
That is great.
Very nice to meet you.
You too, Jeff.
yeah. Jeff has been like on every single Lunch and Learn. We've done 67 of these to date. I can't.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to go ahead, and we have a few parents. I see. Hi, parents that are joining us. And then I know this is recorded as well, like I mentioned to Sarah. Oh, I'll just add people as they come in. And hello to all the parents at home who join us each week. Let's go ahead and get started. We have an awesome guest speaker today. So I will share my screen. A few refreshers for those who are new or haven't joined in a while. A couple Zoom rules. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We recommend speaker view for presentation. Video sharing is optional, though we love to see all your smiling faces. And of course, please type all of your questions and comments into the chat. We will have a Q&A at the end with our amazing guest speaker today, and you can feel free to unmute yourself or type your questions into the chat and I can read them for you. Either way works for us. We want to hear your engagement and your comments. A quick update from Autism Tree. We've now reached over 652,000 people through all of our social media channels. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Facebook and Instagram are our main ones. So thanks to everyone who has been sharing our posts and our content and attending all of our events and expanding our community globally. Our posts have been shared over 1,068 times. And we have also definitely had a more global reach online. Since the pandemic, we now have 433 videos on our YouTube channel, and we posted 380 of those videos since March 12th of last year. So big shout out and thank you to all of our amazing volunteers and program directors and parents who have created video content for us to keep our families feeling connected and loved throughout this time. You know, we're all going through an unprecedented time and it's been difficult for a lot. So these videos have been a big bright spot in the history of Autism Tree. Our Reading with Autism Tree series is also another series we have on our YouTube channel that's available for our members. And this is our volunteers reading children's books for our kids and our families. So we have 109 of those videos. We've also done 322 virtual events to date, and a few of those are in person as well. Since March of last year, we've been lucky to pivot 19 of our 20 programs to be online, and then now we are slowly going back to in-person as well. We have 28 events coming up between now and the end of October. So there's plenty to get involved in as a volunteer and as a parent and a family. And we also have a ton of in-person stuff coming up. So if you want to get to know a little bit more about what we're doing, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'd love to plug you in to our community. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker, Sarah Kesty. I had an amazing meeting with Sarah in August of this year. Sarah reached out to us organically and just said that I want to volunteer for Autism Tree, I want to be a part of your community. So she's a new HPF family member that we're so grateful to have. She is a teacher, a special education educator, and she also she's an expert on executive functioning, which we'll touch upon today, as well as a podcast host. and many more things. She wears a lot of hats, and she's just so warm and just a great resource for our family. So I'm so excited. Please give a warm welcome to Sarah Kesty.
Thank you so much. Okay, I will share my screen and we can get going. One of the places that I'm operating from is Leave No One Behind. So while I will be speaking sort of in general of how to empower children, if this applies to you and you wanted to know kind of what that would look like as an adult or what that might look like in college, if I'm giving a younger example, please reach out in the chat or somehow get my attention, because I want to make sure that everyone's getting something from this and that it's applicable right now and kind of helps you contextualize some of the things that you're going through. That's my biggest hope out of this. And my contact info is at the end, and I absolutely welcome you to reach out if you have questions, or sometimes your brain needs a little while to chew on something, and then you'll think, oh, wait a minute, I'm making a connection. Maybe I should ask her. And that's totally fine. We process at different speeds. So reach out when you do realize that you have questions or ideas. Okay, I got a wonderful introduction, so I can skip this part. But that is.
I'd love for you to elaborate, Sarah, if you have anything to add. You've done a lot more than what I say, so please.
I know, that's true. If we have time at the end, sure. It's not a huge big deal, but that's me. I run Brain Tools Coaching. I have an amazing opportunity to help people learn to kind of fill in some of the skill gaps that they have so that they can move on in their lives. And it's an amazing, it's a pinch me moment, because it's what I've wanted to do for so long, and it's really becoming a full-time wonderful business that's helping people and bringing opportunities like this to help communities that I love. So there you go. That's me. All right, so a lot of us may have heard of executive function. We might have read about it in an abstract or heard someone just mention it, and it gets thrown around a lot, but it's really, really hard to put edges on it so that you can understand it. So the best analogy that I've found is actually a tree, which is perfect for the Autism Tree. Rebecca and I were like, oh, this is a good match. And I promise I didn't steal it. But the idea, if you can picture a tree, kind of like the one I have on the screen, where the trunk is executive function and it branches off to 3 main branches, that's kind of how I envision executive function. There's no right way to do it, but hopefully this illustration can give you something to kind of put new learning on in your head, because what your mind does is takes new information and it has to find a purpose for it, kind of like a hook to hang it on in your brain. Otherwise, it's like, oh, that was cool, and then it falls out of your brain. So if you want to remember something, you have to attach it to something in your brain. This might be a good way to do it for you. So executive function, for my definition, and some of the research is showing that it can kind of go into 3 main branches. So future skills is the first branch. And for future skills, I see that as all the things you do for tomorrow you. So organizing, planning, prioritizing, calendar. And don't feel like you have to take furious notes, because I have this in a visual in just a moment. But if you can kind of see, organizing would be a branch of future skills. And then some of the leaves, some of the smaller skills off of that might be organizing your thoughts, organizing your things, organizing your time. And so now you can kind of see why a tree works well, because future skills branches to 1 branch would be organization, and then there's several types of organization as well. In the context of autism, the future skills show up a lot at school and at the workplace, and sometimes at home as well, because we're wondering, you saw this deadline, why didn't you? Or you know that you have a test on Friday, you should. And if you're hearing things like that, that's a pretty good indication that there are skills missing and we need to be teaching rather than condemning our kids and ourselves for not having those skills. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So we've got future skills as one branch. What questions do you have about that right now?
I can read anything in the chat, or
Thank
something, you can mute yourself.
And it's okay if you're like, okay, I got it right now. I'm gonna scoot on and then interrupt if you need to. Okay, the second one would be like emotions and attention. And this would be managing your attention. So knowing when it's okay to kind of zone out and when you really have to focus, managing your emotions for that self-regulation. Am I too tired? Am I too wired? Am I just right? Matching your social interactions with the context. So matching your voice volume or the kind of content, or your, am I going to say a bad word or not, depending on the situation. That's heavily impacted by autism. We know that. That also falls under executive function. And because it does, the great news is there's lots of research that shows that it can be improved. We can find strategies for it. I saw a quick chat. Is it?
Yes, from Jeff Snyder. Hi, Jeff. He says, even as an adult, I struggle a lot with executive functioning. Mhm.
Right. Jeff, I appreciate your honesty and your openness. And I would say, me too.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
in that
Yeah.
group. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, because, there are times where I need to do something, but I don't have the energy to do it because I'm either preoccupied with something else or I don't feel like doing it. So that's kind of an example. I mean, and a lot of adults on the spectrum who are neurodiverse, they tend to struggle a lot with executive functioning. So
Mhm.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. And I
no
appreciate
problem.
the example. And it's true. And it's not that, I think the tricky part is recognizing the struggle, but also not having a judgment. You're not doing anything wrong when it's difficult. It's just difficult.
Mhm.
So emotions and attention are a second branch. And then a third branch is learning and memory. And I want to caution you as adults to not assume, oh, that applies to kids because it's school, because we're learning all the time. We're learning new technology. We're trying to remember things at work, new processes, or even games and fun things. You're going to have strategies inside of your mind that help you facilitate memory. Or if you don't, then you're feeling the ramifications of that a lot. Like, oh, I forgot, I'm sorry. Or, oh, I meant to and I didn't. And there's kind of that, like, that's where some of that shame kicks in, which I'm going to teach you some strategies to avoid that in just a sec. What are you wondering or thinking right now?
I have a quick comment. I just
Yeah.
want to say how this is executive functioning is very super relevant to what Autism Tree is doing today, because we've been around for 18 years. So we have all these school kids that are in our programs. And then also more recently, we've been transitioning into helping our teens who are getting ready for a career or to go to college. And a lot of the parents of teens, we've been around 18 years, so they're graduating and they're in that transition. So a lot of our parents or teens are reaching out to us about these specific topics of how do we prepare, our parents or our kids, our teens, young adults, how to adjust to life in college and life in a workplace. So
You're right. You're so right. And I think, we don't realize how much the environment impacts our executive function, because if you think about school, a lot of the time management is kind of done for you. There's a bell system, there's reminders, there's teacher pressure, there's that social pressure. There's a lot that kind of forces you to do things. And I think last year when we lost a lot of that, it sort of evaporated the time management and some of the accountability that we depended on externally. And that's when we all went, oh my gosh, I need some new neural pathways and fast. And so, yeah, I think that's really brought a lot of attention to executive function, which I'm thankful for, because it's such an important topic and so empowering to understand. So I showed you the branch. Here's another way to visualize the branches, but as terms in a chart. So the same information, different presentation, but the idea is this is just some of the branches and leaves from those main branches of the executive function tree. And as you're looking at these, is anyone sticking out to say, oh, I didn't know that was executive function?
Well, I think it's really important that you talk about the emotional regulation, because that is such a foundation for our brain to be functioning in any capacity. So I think it's an essential part of executive functioning, but yet I think that's not a common thing that people associate with it.
Yeah, excellent point. And it's I'll tell you why neurologically, I bet you already know, but I think we hear executive function and we think, oh, put some sticky notes or organize your backpack, or like maybe you do dishes every day. Oh, your executive function's intact, but it's just like an onion. There's so many layers. And what you're describing, Marilee, is that so we use a hand model for the brain with kids. I don't know if you've probably seen it. Yeah. So we teach kids kind of the concept of downstairs brain and upstairs brain. And what that idea is, so sometimes the cerebellum falls off, and it just did. So we're going to still be able to breathe and balance, but the cerebellum fell off. So the downstairs brain that just fell off of my brain model is more in charge of the reactive, the lizard brain, the primal brain, breathing, all the things that keep us alive that don't necessarily involve complex thoughts. The upstairs brain, that prefrontal cortex, which is most strongly connected with executive function, that is our thinking brain. That's the more evolved part of our brain that helps us evaluate choices or think about multiple meanings of words or appreciate humor, all kinds of stuff. Like our executive function lives in here. When we become emotionally dysregulated, when we're upset, like Jeff said, when we're really worried about something, our amygdalas, and I'm not going to say they hijack our brain, because that term went around for a while, the amygdala hijack, that kind of assumes no responsibility, like you're totally out of control. That's a helpless spot to be in. I'd say the amygdala has heavy influence on us, but we still have some strategies. So here's what happens if we do our hand brain model. We've got our downstairs brain and our upstairs brain, and when we're calm and regulated, we're able to have those two components talk. So your reactive brain goes, whoa, danger. And then your thinking brain can say, nah, that's really only a fly, not a bee. We're not allergic. It's okay. And then you choose your reaction. When your amygdala and your emotional system is really on high alert, we call it flipping your lid. So the idea is that there's like a kind of a communication breakdown. It's neurologically not completely severed, but damaged. There's a lot of traffic on this highway. And so your reactive brain kind of takes over without the supervision of your thinking brain. So this is why I cuss in traffic sometimes. This is why, your kid might hit when they're very upset. It's that losing control piece. And Marilee, I think what you were speaking to is so important, that we've got to give our kids a toolbox for calming down and pepping up, because that's part of emotional regulation too, right? Like when you're in that blue zone, or when you're feeling just down, or really, like Jeff was saying, like hard to get started, you need some skills on that end too. But the idea is to give them a ton of strategies outside of the context of when they need them. Because if your lid is flipped, your thinking brain is going to be like, I'm not available. No, thanks. I know all these strategies, but I can't get them to you right now. So it's important to have them kind of on more of like an automatic menu system, so that we can access them and utilize them when we actually need them. The other component of it is kind of thinking backwards in our part of setting up environments for our kids, and thinking about what does support and cause emotional dysregulation, and trying to help our kids either think through it in a calm space so it doesn't upset them at the time, or think about ways to avoid it. So a common example would be like fire drills at school. Okay, we can have headphones on at that time. Unless, I know that's like a very basic example, but that's kind of one that you can see. Thank you, Marilee. That was a great example, and so super important right now. Before we got on the call, I was telling Rebecca that I teach 2.5 days a week at a middle school in San Diego. And we definitely have a lot of emotional dysregulation. And I think part of it is that we don't have a lot of our faces to be able to read. So, we've trained our kids to access faces for feedback, and now they don't have that. And so they're listening for tone, which is kind of muffled with the mask, and they're really having a hard time. I have kids that kind of jump when I come around, and that is not my brand. I'm not a scary teacher, and it was very eye-opening to me. So we did something outside where I covered my face and smiled and not, and they really couldn't tell from my eyes. So I'm really extra thankful for my experience with the autism community, because it's helped me understand how important that feedback is, and how we've got to teach kids how to read people. Now the whole spectrum of neurodiversity needs it. So interesting.
I was also going to say, related to that too, I think we can't underestimate the impact the pandemic has had on kids and adults, and our emotions and our capacity to regulate our emotions. There might be, anxiety and worry behind those masks as well, and just discomfort because kids haven't been together. So I think there's talk about onions. I think that's a whole nother layer, is how are we feeling in our pandemic world?
You're totally right. And then if we think back to, I don't know if this is going to go backwards, but that executive function tree, if we've got that lens, then we're empowered to think more in terms of, okay, we need a strategy rather than something's wrong with this kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, so when we're out of sync with executive function, here's what it can look like. And I'm not going to make you call yourself out, because I'm probably associated with several of these too. So this isn't a judgment. It's just how, when your executive function isn't showing up as you'd like it to, these are things that can happen. So take a look at the list and think about in terms of yourself or somebody you love. I know, Jeff, you said getting started on things is really tricky. And then I'll add a little bit while you're reading that. Stressed brains have difficulty accessing executive function. So even if we have a kid that's more neurotypical, under stress, our executive functions aren't as accessible because of that flipping the lid thing. So again, that speaks to the importance of strategies all over if you're identified as a person on the spectrum or not.
Does anyone on the call want to share maybe one that they're struggling with? I can go first. Definitely pushing through low energy. I like what you just said about the stressed brains, Sarah. It's difficult. So I think the self-management category could definitely improve on.
Yeah, we'll brainstorm some strategies. Jeff was also going to share was,
yeah, he said something that helps with executive functioning is stimming toys like fidget spinners. I use them sometimes.
nice. Yeah, I have a whole menu of them in my classroom. What did you want to add?
Well, I was thinking more of losing I think, sometimes, losing my cool because my family, unfortunately, is not a very patient family. So sometimes, we're not as, we're not as patient when it comes to certain things. And then also, also for me, also, we're also prone to losing or hunting for the same things every day. I mean, more of my folks, but even I, have to lose and end up hunting for same things every day. And, it's just, it's just, that's just an example that I have. And then, and then also, always pushing through low energy, which is also, if I'm like really stressed out or about to have a sensory overload, I keep pushing through it. And unfortunately, that does end up resulting in some consequences for me.
Mm-hmm. That's real life. Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like, both of you saying that you're pushing through low energy probably relates to what we're all going through a little bit. Not to say that it's not a struggle for you, because it definitely is, just to kind of emphasize that you're not alone in that. And also, I think at this point, a lot of us are reevaluating. If I'm this tired all the time, maybe this is my body telling me like I need to change something up. So sometimes it's not a problem with you or your brain. Sometimes it's like an indication that, that behind the scenes maybe needs a change. Maybe what you're doing needs a revamp, or you're feeling like maybe you're not in the right spot emotionally or in a relationship or things like that. So sometimes that's good feedback for us too. But Rebecca, I'll send this to you and you can share it with everybody. I have a energy mapping technique where you can kind of just track your energy for a couple days, and it's so fascinating because we live in these bodies, and yet if you track yourself for a couple days, you'll go, what? Look at this pattern. I had no idea that every day, 94 minutes after lunch, I am very sleepy. I wonder if I could, spread out my eating so it doesn't hit me so hard. Or, every Wednesday, I'm really weepy. I wonder what that is. Oh, I have that meeting. I wonder if there's a connection. It's fascinating to take kind of a look at your life from the balcony and just see it in terms of, we do this all the time with like ABA and autism interventions, yet we hardly ever empower people to see it on their own. And when you can see it, then sometimes at least the need, and if not even like the extra bonus of strategies, sort of just rises to the top. And then you're in a more empowered place to make decisions. So for an example, if you tracked your energy and you realized that 2-ish, 3-ish is just your sleepy time, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe that's when you plug in your time to go for a walk or do like don't get mad at me, teachers, but like teachers sometimes give busy work. Maybe that's what you do. Your busy work for school because your brain's not real available around 2-ish, 3-ish. So schedule accordingly. So I think I kind of got ahead of myself, which is my next and my favorite slide, which is that detective perspective. So we kind of touched on this in a lot of different ways, but here's the idea. If you only learn one thing today, this is the thing. Take a detective perspective. And what that means is, instead of judging yourself or the person that you're working with, instead of shoulding all around, like you should do that, or you're 12, you should know how, drop that language and embrace like, all right, what am I missing? Like a detective would, or, what could I teach this kid that he's not understanding right now that would empower him to be organized? Because I can promise you, if you're talking to yourself and saying, man, I need to stop losing my cool, just stop. The need's still there. There's no solution. All you've done is made it worse by making yourself feel bad. Or I'm hearing this a lot with my colleagues, like, these kids need to focus. Yep, that's a fact. Now what? So the detective perspective gives you, oops, wrong way, gives you the extra step of like, okay, so why is this showing up? What can we do to fix it? And when you have that sort of like puzzly brain where you're looking like, every day I've been having this issue, or I'm always looking for my keys before I leave and it makes me late. What could I do differently? Or what strategy might I need? And sometimes you won't know right away. And that's when you ask somebody like me, or somebody that, maybe somebody in your life that seems to know where their keys are all the time. Like, what strategy do you use? And then I would also add the caveat that not everybody else's strategy is going to work for you, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a strategy for you. It just means that you haven't found the right one yet. What are you thinking or wondering right now?
I just want to say, we talk about that a lot for parents who call me, with their kiddos. It's not that we're embracing that kid where they are. And it's not that they can't do something, but we just haven't found the right way to help them do something. So it's a lot of pivoting.
Right. And sometimes it's kind of getting clarity on what that might look like, because so for example, I'm coaching somebody who has ADHD, which is very much aligns with executive function deficits. And to him, he needs a lot of variety in his brain, a lot of novelty to keep that dopamine flowing so that he has the focus juice to do school. To his parents, it looks like he's messing around, like he's in a dance club, he sometimes socializes, but that variety is what's keeping his brain fed. And so that self-advocacy piece of taking a detective perspective on yourself, kind of like owning what's different, not what's wrong, but just what's different, and then being able to express it is going to be huge. But it doesn't mean that anybody's right or wrong. It just is success looks different for everybody.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry for my terrible graphic. I added that today because it was like written next to it and it's very confusing. So it looks like the tree has band-aids on, I'll admit it. Not a graphic designer here, but I kind of wanted to present this in a way that would be pretty familiar with our group, because we think in terms of problem solving. So this is how I present executive function to teachers and parents, is that when you think of the skill that you want, you can consider the roots, so kind of the baseline understandings, the perspectives that somebody needs, and then consider the branches of strategies, what those look like across the settings, and how you're going to sustain that and generalize it. So if we have time, I'll riff on one if you wanted to tell me an executive function skill you'd like to work on, and then we can kind of do the tree together.
I want to open this up to maybe one of the parents who can talk about their kids.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Hi.
Hi.
So my name is Natalia, and my son Roman is a junior. So every morning we basically struggling with our morning routine. It doesn't help that he has to, well, both of us have to wake up early because he gets picked up at 6:45 a.m. But every morning I felt like I understand that, it's not his fault. And I felt that I provided some tools for him. We found like a specific spot for his backpack. We composed the list of, the steps that he needs to take every morning, and we still fail. And last week he lost his backpack, left it at school. That's kind of like on top of everything. And I feel like I know what needs to be done in theory, but I don't know what's missing and how to make it to basically, well, go away.
To smooth it out. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Can he, like, what part of the routine can he do independently?
Well, he can do everything independently. The question is for him to actually do it. That's the thing. And he's just not being consistent. So one morning I remember last year I like overslept and I woke up to him just basically living and meeting his school bus, and he did everything by himself. But then almost like every morning, and I try to kind of give him, because he wants to do it himself. He doesn't like me constantly, like hovering, and I try to kind of just let him do it. But then again, I'm afraid that the bus is gonna leave and he's gonna be upset. And then I have another kid who I drive to school, his brothers. So I cannot pinpoint like one task that he's failing to do. It's kind of like overall. Like we can go over, okay, let's prepare the fresh clothes, before you go to bed. And we do that. And then in the morning, he fails to, I look at him and they're, mismatched socks and like the old t-shirt. And so just basically things like that.
Okay. So is he not doing the tasks, or is he not doing them the right way?
Sometimes he does them and sometimes he doesn't. Let me just put it
so
this way.
yeah,
So I'm just trying to get a consistency, because I don't know like where I can trust him to just do everything by himself, or where I need to kind of interfere and remind him, by the way, you need to, don't forget to change your shirt or put like basketball uniform, in the backpack. So like stuff like that. I kind of want, the goal is for him to be able to do it by himself, and not to miss the bus, because the bus system is like very strict. So you're basically late for like 1 minute, they're gone. And as you can imagine, it presents like stressful situation basically every morning, because again, I try to let him do it independently. At the same time, I know that if I don't remind him or kind of like follow up, well, there will be consequences, and he's going to be upset, and I will be upset.
Sure. So it sounds like, sorry, my things went way backwards. It sounds like it's more of a learning and memory, if I'm hearing you right. It's inconsistent. When he's not doing the steps, is he distracted? Does he engage with something else? Or
He's on his phone a lot in the morning, and I even like played with the idea, just kind of take it away, but I don't want to be, kind of punish him for something that he has no way controlling. So
can I challenge your thinking right there?
of course.
He doesn't control the problem, but he can influence the strategies, and he can own some of that, like not put everything, just fix it right away, but he can own some strategies. And you're not being mean to him if you're helping him identify a distractor and having him set limits on it himself.
Okay.
So I would encourage you to have a conversation about, like, when you fall off track, what do you notice you're doing? Oh, well, I'm on my phone. Well, if you're on your phone so much and you miss the bus, oh no, what would happen? And just kind of like walk him through it.
Okay.
You could even like map it out.
Okay.
And if he can get to the point where he's self-identifying, oh yeah, this cool device is driving me like to nearly miss the bus all the time, then he can say, all right, mom, can you give it to me at 6:40 when my brain and body are ready, and then I can have 5 extra minutes to play on my phone.
You know what? Magic, because I've been thinking about it and I just never had to bring myself to. That's a very good idea. Thank you. We'll try it tomorrow.
Yay! Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool power of this kind of stuff. If you can think backwards to what maybe is causing it, because at first you said it was routine, and then look, we got back to it and it was a distraction. It was managing attention.
Yep.
This stuff's so interesting. I love it. Thank you for
I
your
agree.
question. That was
seems
fun.
like it's so easy once you got it. But
it's not easy though.
It's not, right?
No. No, and the funny thing is, it's easier to like coach someone else's life than your own. You need that view from the balcony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Glad to help.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thanks, Rebecca.
I'm so glad you joined today. Well, we are, getting close to time. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, Sarah, how much do you have left to present?
How much do I love to present? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, like 100. I love helping families, and I love like being a brain detective and all this stuff and it's really cool because I get to test it out in my classroom a couple days a week and then bring it here. So it's real life.
Yeah. If anybody wants to, I think we can, talk for another 5 minutes if any other parent wants to speak about their kid and maybe walk through that too.
Yeah. And then Jeff had a question, his hand up, I saw.
Just real quick, Sarah. I'm looking at your podcast. If you're ever looking for someone to interview for your podcast, I would be up for it.
Jeff, I'm taking you up on that offer.
Thanks. And I also put my website in the chat wall if you're ever interested in.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. I'm going to be on the neurodiversity podcast next week. So it's a good group. It's a cool awareness that we're all developing together. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Sarah, can you send me the details about that podcast that you're going to be featured on next week?
Yeah, sure. Oh, look, there's Jeff. Awesome.
Anyone else want to share? I know we have a couple more moms, so.
I like your quiet waiting dance. We need something to do, right? Like, this is awkward.
It's so funny because awkward silence shouldn't be awkward, but it's
It is for people socialized in America. We're very awkward with quiet.
that's why we use so many filler words like or
I know. And sometimes when I'm teaching kids to, like demonstrate those social dynamics and that social communication, I'm like, is this really valuable? It makes you reconsider too.
Awesome. Thanks. Joy typed in the chat. She's another one of our moms. She said, thanks, Rebecca. I'm multitasking. Unfortunately, I know a lot of our parents are.
Oh, I imagine so. Well, and you have my contact through my website. So please reach out if you need anything. I'm here for you all.
She says, great discussion. Really appreciate it.
Oh,
We do a follow-up email. Sarah, I'd love your slides to include as well.
oh, sure. Yeah.
And we'll send all those resources and including your contact info so parents can reach out directly.
Perfect. And then I have my executive function, because I know that I have fun with these and then I forget later. So I wrote down to send you the energy tracker too.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, that was such an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your time and really just engaging with all of us. Like, you did such a wonderful job, and we're just very grateful. I'm so excited to have you as part of our family. And as you can all see, Sarah has like the personality for it, of like helping our families one-on-one. So thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. Thank you for this. It was really fun to meet everybody and geek out about executive function.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a group picture if anybody wants to share their screen. If not, that's okay. I know people are.
Rebecca, sorry, I'm multitasking too and just finished my shower, so I'm I'm not in my most presentable state. So
No worries, Natalia.
next time I'll be ready.
Everybody's pandemic look.
Yes. Well, I have an event at school today, so I'm just kind of getting ready.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a picture. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Nice to meet you. Jeff, I will be in touch.
Thank you, Sarah. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
So good to see you.